Okay, I'm currently standing in the crawl space of my 5-story, 48-foot tall, multi-generational home. And I thought it might be helpful to go ahead and cover some of the costs of what it costs to add this crawl space to the home. It actually will be 6 feet 2 inches tall. Once I'm done, wanted to cover some of the additional costs of what went into building this. Because I did DIY it, the labor was free, so that obviously helps out tremendously. But I do highly recommend that if anyone is going to do a basement or a crawl space, you do it out of ICF. Well, especially if you're going to do a basement, do it out of ICF blocks. You got 2.5 inches of foam on both sides. You fill it full of concrete. That foam on both sides really helps to keep your basement a lot more comfortable. So let's go ahead and start. Well, a little bit more about this crawl space. So yeah, I've been DIYing this 5-story multi-generational passive ICF house for the last 1.5 years. And I just finished the shell, so that feels really good. I've got all 5 levels. All the concrete is full all the way to the top. A lot of people do ICF just for their basements. I went above grade, 3 levels above grade, so all the way to the top, 35 feet above the street level. But today's little video is about the crawl space and how much it costs to do the crawl space. So my home is 72 feet long and it's 34 feet wide. And I actually do have this room right back here. You see the 2-inch foam temporary door there. That's a room underneath the garage. It's 16 feet tall, 20 feet deep, and 24 feet wide. I'm not going to include that in the costs. I'll do a separate video about that, but just spoiler alert, super excited about that room. Definitely think it's worth it. But let's go back to the cost of the crawl space and how much it cost. So in terms of extra ICF blocks, I spent a total of $9,111 to do the extra blocks. Yes, it is 6 feet 2, but because you can see I've got open wood floor trusses, technically that adds an extra foot. However, to make it so that I didn't have to do more blocks, you can see that my footer, and a footer for something that's 1 million pounds, which is how much concrete went into this house, the footer is actually quite wide. So the footer is a total of 5 feet along the load-bearing walls, and then I think like 3.5 feet on the non-load-bearing walls as far as the floor goes. So that was one way that I was able to gain an extra foot of height, is by digging down to the bottom of the footers. And then it also just makes it easier to do, especially DIY footers as well. I'm not going to include the cost of the concrete because eventually we are going to fill this in with concrete. I'm also not going to include the cost of the Pango wrap. The Pango wrap is my vapor barrier, my water barrier, my termite barrier, and my radon barrier. I'm not including that because had I just done the basement, I would have had all of those costs. So we're only going to include the extra costs. Okay, on the outside, so for the space on the outside of the ICF walls, I needed to protect them when I was backfilling. So because I'm in an area that basically is just a massive French drain, I live on a bunch of rubble rock. There is no clay in this. I didn't have to worry about hydrostatic pressure. And so I just needed to worry about protecting my ICF blocks when I was backfilling. And so I ended up buying, in essence, shower panels. So they cost about $20 a piece. Had to put in $1,000 worth of those so that when my excavator was backfilling, the big rocks would tumble down, they'd hit the shower panels, and they wouldn't puncture my ICF walls. Not that the foam itself is that it would be a problem for it to damage, but I put on it's called Blue Max, and basically it's a roll-on polymer to waterproof the outside of the walls. And so I did that to protect that Blue Max. I mean, it has a 1,200% flexibility, but it's not going to do well against big rocks. And the panels worked really, really well. Okay, to excavate this additional amount, because I not only had to pay my excavator to dig it, but also to take most of it away because I am on just 1/4 of an acre. That was $8,769. for the extra concrete. And this price is out of control in this area. I just got to say, it's a scam. They're charging like $240 per yard where I live, and the rest of the country, y'all are paying like $150. So that kind of broke the bank a little bit, but the concrete was an extra $8,000. To do the extra rebar, because you have to put rebar in your ICF walls, that was an extra $1,200 for the post and beams. So as you can see behind me, I've got these 8-inch wooden posts between the post and that 15-inch glue lam beam. And then you'll also see the Simpson caps as well. All of those costs were $4,000. And then also just a real quick fun story about these. So my 72-year-old dad at the time and I lifted each one of these beams by hand. So we set those suckers by hand. We also did that on the basement level, and then I realized I had to do it on ladders on that one. That was just too dangerous. So the rest of the time, we set all these glue lam beams with a crane. But down here in the Crawlspace, we did it by hand. Also, I needed to obviously pay for additional open web floor trusses. And then the open web floor trusses, to put them into the concrete walls, those are called Watchkins hangers. So between the open web floor trusses and the extra Watchkins hangers, that was $6,500. So before I give you to the grand total, unless you've been writing it down, let me talk a little bit about, was it worth it to put in this extra storage space? Because at 6'2" with no egress, obviously we're never going to be able to use it for habitable space, and it's always just going to be for storage. So the house that I am building is a multi-generational home, meaning that we're going to have my parents on one level, my wife and I on another couple of levels, 2 adult kids, and hopefully their families will be on another couple of levels. And this is a legacy home. I mean, this sucker is going to stay in the family for 500 years, many, many, many generations to come. And having access to all of your storage downstairs is really nice, so you don't have to pay for a storage unit. Although you could become a minimalist and then you never have to pay for a storage unit. But nonetheless, it is convenient to have access to storage. Also, another huge convenience is to have all of the mechanicals down here in the storage area. Something else about this particular storage area is I am not going to be putting any foam down here. And the reason why is because I look at this as a massive thermal battery. So during the winter, it is a massive thermal battery, the earth, that provides me with 55-degree heat. And I want that in the winter, because right now my fingers are popsicles. I mean, we're down into the teens. Tomorrow morning, it's going to be like 5 degrees. So constant 55 degrees coming up from the earth in the winter is going to be really nice. Then in the summer, the opposite happens. So we'll have temperatures up to 105 degrees outside. Usually that was the max. Usually we're in the 90s. And so once again, this becomes a massive heat sink in that it's 55 degrees down here. And I want to be able to use this as kind of a supplemental way to help cool the rest of the house. I live in a high mountain desert, so the nighttime temperatures are usually low enough. We'll be able to pull in all of that cool air and put it into my massive Yeti cooler called a house, a passive ICF house. Keep it cool during the day, but this will be a nice supplemental source to pull the cool air during the summer and put it up into the upper levels. What I will be doing, and I probably should have included this cost in it, but it's fine. I'm also going to be putting insulation in the open web floor trusses because I want my basement floor to be nice and warm in the winter and nice and cool in the summer. Another benefit that I'm going to be able to have is I'm going to be doing a lot with water solar. And so I'm going to have some pretty massive tanks down here that I can store all of that energy that I end up getting from the sun, and I'll be able to store it in the big water tanks down here. The other thing that I'll be able to do is right there, that pipe that you see coming out of the wall, that's actually my city water. We unfortunately have low pressure in this area. It needs to go up at least 40 feet to reach those upper levels. So more than likely, especially because of the number of families that are related to me that are going to be living in this house, we're going to end up needing to put in probably a water pressure tank. So that's going to be down here as well. And then the other thing that I want to have is a walk-in refrigerator. And especially right now during the winter, that sucker is going to be powered for free just by pushing all this cold air into the fridge/freezer. So that's something else that we'll be having down here in the crawl space. One thing to know about a crawl space that is only 6'2", once we get the concrete poured, is if you're taller than 6'2", which none of my family is, then you're gonna have to dunk your head. Although I will tell you from experience of knocking my head against that 15-inch glulam beam, those of us who are a little bit taller, yeah, we have to make sure that we always remember to duck. So, grand total. Let's go ahead and get to the grand total. It cost me, so remember, labor was free, so I'm not including that. And these ICF blocks, you really can DIY stack them as long as you brace it correctly so that they are straight and plumb. I have other videos on how to do that. So the grand total is $39,384. And remember, I'm 72 by 34. So when you do the math on that, it came out to a total of $16.09 per square foot. So my personal feeling is, given that this is going to be benefiting the family for hundreds of years to come, it was well worth the $16.09 per square foot. But let me know down in the comment section below if you think it was worth it and if you would do it. And I will also mention another benefit is all of my plumbing, all of my electrical is going to be up. Well, actually, really, it's just the plumbing. The electrical is going to be up there. But in terms of my plumbing, my water, it's all in these open web floor trusses, which means that I don't ever have to worry about having a slab on grade or a slab, any of the plumbing being in concrete. I'll always be able to access it later on if need be up in the open web floor trusses. So let me know in the comment section below if you think it was worth $16.09 a square foot to put this in. And be sure to like and subscribe so you can follow along on this crazy DIY journey. And thanks for watching.